I'm here on a ski trip wearing a dive watch. Why? Well, I don't dive, but I'm a passable snowboarder, and I love that modern divers can go anywhere and survive pretty much any activity, whether you're diving or playing in the snow. There's a lot of great options from Rolex, Tudor, and Omega, and other brands as well. That's why we're out here in France. No, we're not diving, we're hitting the slopes, and this is a week on the wrist with the Longines Ultra Chron Dive watch. Dive watches were initially designed as essential tools for, you guessed it, diving, but in modern times a lot of us enjoy wearing them for their handsome aesthetic and nearly indestructible nature. You grab the dive watch when you know your adventure could result in a few scratches or even a splash of water. Nowadays that includes nearly everything from a trip to the grocery store to, in this video's instance, snowboarding, which I'm obviously terrible at. So in a sea of popular divers from the likes of all the big brands, what makes this Longines Ultra Chron stand out from the pack? And why would anyone choose it over the others? Of course, in any life decision, that's inevitably up to you to decide. However, I have some opinions on this topic. But first, let's talk about this Ultra Chron. Longines is no stranger to the watch game. They were founded in the early 1800s, and their winged hourglass logo is the oldest registered trademark that's still in use today. Since they've been around for so damn long, they've built up quite an extensive back catalog of watches. More recently, I'd say since at least 2007 with the release of their Legend Diver, Longines has really leaned into revisiting some of those old references, with the Ultra Chron being one of the more recent offerings. The original Ultra Chron was released in the late 60s and was known mainly for its accurate high-frequency movement as well as its 300-meter water resistance rating. Today's Ultra Chron looks nearly the same minus the date window and is highlighted by some of those exact same things. Sure, it's a little larger on paper at 43mm in diameter and 13.6mm thick, but it maintains the same water resistance rating and also still has a high frequency movement. This time coming by way of the modern caliber L836.6, which was designed exclusively for Longines in collaboration with ETA. While not technically in-house, I'd still call this in-group since both Longines and ETA fall under the Swatch Group's umbrella. Whatever the case may be, the caliber L836.6 is a real highlight for the Ultra Chron. It beats away at a brisk 5 Hz or 10 beats per second, has 52 hours of power, has a silicone balance spring, and an anti-magnetic escape wheel, but what's even more interesting to me is the new chronometer standard that Longines calls Ultra Chronometer. They've partnered with Geneva's Time Lab, the same folks that brought you the Geneva Seal, to help test the Ultra Chron to achieve what they call Ultra Chronometer certification. Unlike COSC certification, the movement is tested fully cased for 15 consecutive days compared to 10 with COSC at various temperatures, and is only deemed an Ultra Chronometer if its daily variation falls within -4 to +6 seconds per day, which is really accurate by today's standards. This is great stuff, especially when you consider this is a high beat movement in a sturdy diver case for a reasonable $3,600. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money, but it's a hell of a value because it's currently the most affordable watch equipped with a high beat movement from any of the big brands on the market today. None from Rolex, Tudor, nothing from their sister brand Omega, even Grand Seiko, who makes quite a few high beat movements, they don't even have anything at this price point. The Ultra Chron is a true value proposition based on the movement alone. The Ultra Chron's insides are impressive, but what good would that be if the watch just didn't have the looks? Luckily, the Ultra Chron is a very handsome piece. You might balk at that 43mm size, but I found it fit my 7.25-inch wrist great. That's probably due to the reasonable 48mm lug-to-lug distance and lack of flaring from the bracelet's inlinks. The case is also cushion shaped, which I think gives it a nice presence on the wrist. There's polished and satin finished surfaces throughout, a 120 click unidirectional rotating bezel that feels solid with little to no play, and in a surprising twist, includes a sapphire bezel insert as opposed to ceramic or aluminum. I love sapphire bezel inserts because they just pop way more than any of the other materials. It's also something I've really only seen on Blancpain and Grand Seiko watches, which are both multiple times pricier than the Ultra Chron. On the dial, you get a grainy matte black surface which is visually appealing, along with applied indices at 12, 3, 6, and 9. You also get an applied winged hourglass logo under the 12 o'clock position, and a pretty badass Ultra Chron logo right above the 6 o'clock position. What you don't get is a million lines of text like you'll find on a lot of watches nowadays. So not necessary, but what can we do? I also dig the blocky red minute hand. Makes it much easier for me to tell the time and adds a nice splash of color to the dial. The comfortable bracelet is a 7-link style that starts at 22mm and tapers down to 18mm at the clasp. The clasp feels solid and has some micro adjustment capabilities, which is always nice. You'll need some sort of tool or toothpick to adjust it, but any on-the-fly options might be asking a lot at this price point. So in closing, I'm a bit lucky because my job inherently requires me to handle a lot of watches, and I've got to spend some quality wrist time with many a great dive watches. With that being said, I gotta say, the Longines Ultra Chron is definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite so far. You know, it's interesting to me. I feel like everyone likes the same modern dive watches. It's either the Rolex Submariner for $9,100, that's retail price, the Tudor Black Bay 58 at $3,950, or the Omega Seamaster 300M at $5,600. Look, I like and appreciate all of those watches. Hell, I owned the Black Bay 58 at one point, but are some of us at some point willing to try something just a little bit different? You know, escape the herd for a minute, step away from the algorithmic Instagram feeds dumping the same old watches down our throats. You know, you can say no to that infamous call from your authorized dealer. Again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of the watches I mentioned. They're universally loved for a reason, but the Ultra Chron has just as much history. It's built just as tough, is just as water resistant, has a modern high beat movement which none of them have, has a more unique case design, and is the most affordable of the bunch. If you're looking for a modern diver that punches above its price point and then some, then you have to give this one a try. Trust me, you won't regret it.